Hey, this is Attorney Crossland. Black history is beautiful because with all the pain and suffering, we continue to grow stronger. And I appreciate learning from my history.
All right, everybody, Rashad Milligan for Rolling Out News. Today, we are joined by Mr. Attorney Darnell Crosland up there in Connecticut. He is a family attorney spokesperson for Lauren Smith Fields, the 23-year-old Black woman who died after she went on a Bumble date in December 2021. Attorney, first things first, just, I guess, how have these past couple of weeks been for you?
Well, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a tremendous amount of stress on the family to have to grieve and at the same time advocate for their rights. No one should have to go through the process that this family has gone through. So while grieving, they've been marching in the streets, making their voices heard by the world. And what we were disappointed about the most was that the world can hear us crying for justice and equality, but the city of Bridgeport and its administration had done nothing until this week when they finally put the two officers in charge of this investigation on administrative leave. So it's an enema of sunshine, but we've been in the dark for so long that we'll have to accept that for now as we continue to strive for justice.
Attorney, for those of you who for those who are watching, you might know just a little bit about the case. They've seen the headline in passing, but they don't necessarily know all the details and crooks and crannies. Could you please give just a brief overview of what's going on here?
Yeah, so while everyone was getting ready for the Christmas holiday and trying to get into a festive mood, preparing for the Christmas holiday, Lauren Smith Fields was reported dead by a guy that she went out with on a date on Bumble. The gentleman apparently came over to her home and from what we know, was drinking tequila and playing board games. That's what he reports. After that, the police were called and they decided to do no investigation. They collected no items of evidentiary value from the apartment. They just discarded her like she was nothing. And 2 weeks after this individual had a statement taken by the police with no corroboration, we find a condom with semen in it. We find lubricant. We find a bloody mattress. We find a pill on the kitchen counter. This gentleman said that they had no sex and he never took his clothes off. Yet still, the police failed to see if in fact his statement comports with what was found on the scene. And so we had to take to the streets to ask for justice for Lauren. On December 29th, we forced the police to collect those items. And as of today, we're in February now, February 2nd, those items still have not been submitted to the state laboratory for analysis. And that's a typical routine.
So pretty much what you're saying is, like you kind of alluded to it in the intro as well, is that this thing it's taken Cardi B, it's taken Bia, a Boston rapper who spoke out and, met with you the other day. It's taken celebrities and it's taken viral posts on TikTok and Twitter to really get, authorities to pretty much do their job, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think, like New York Times is doing a follow-up. We spoke to them this morning on how of the world get mainstream media coverage to move those investigations to some resolve, and how we had to use the Underground Railroad, almost like Harriet Tubman again, to get some resolve. And by Underground Railroad, I mean the social media, the Facebooks, the TikToks. That's our Underground Railroad. And so once again, we may be moving in. We just moved into another new year, 2022, and today starts the first Black Day of Black History Month, but the history of pain and inequality is still present. So we have a long way to go in terms of seeking justice in this country.
I guess, what do you think the handling of this case says about the way the world and America in particular values Black women?
I think it's clear that when you are operating on an individual basis, Blacks, whites, Asians, Latinos, I think we all from our hearts understand that we're better together. And so there's not a situation where I'm saying that, white people are violating our rights. But what I do believe that systemically, there's an implicit bias or straight out racism. I think you're somewhere in between that continues to have these scenarios play out. where police departments kill Black people quicker than they kill white people, where police departments would view a 14-year-old boy, a Black boy, as a man and treat him like a man. Yet still they'll treat a 14-year-old white boy as a young child. And so I think that that's systemic. That's not necessarily my neighbor. But if my neighbor doesn't start to speak out for rights of that 14-year-old Black boy, then we're never going to get justice for Lawrence Smith Fields in this country.
You know, we're down here in the South. I'm located based out of Atlanta. So many times you hear about the South and racism affiliated with the South and the Confederacy and stuff, but this is in Connecticut. I guess just how would you kind of describe that type of racism or the climate up there in Connecticut, New Hampshire, New York, that type of area?
Well, you know, they've always talked about this thing called the south of the Mason-Dixon line, and where you guys will suffer if you're south of that line. But let me tell you, maybe south of that line, you may have more overt racism, and maybe when Blacks sold their farms years ago and got the Cadillac and moved up to New York, they thought that they have arrived. But up in these areas, the racism may not come with sweet tea, but it still exists. And so that's the problem that we're facing. You know, you're up in these places, Manhattan, Connecticut, et cetera, and you have the systemic racism that continues to disenfranchise Blacks and Latinos and other minorities. And it's not as overt as the South, but it's ever present, and we need to stop that.
I've seen the family, and I've seen yourself publicly thank Cardi B for bringing attention to this case. Where was the attention before and after Cardi B kind of brought light to it also over social media?
Yeah, and that you know, I appreciate you bringing that up, because one thing is for sure, like, money doesn't eradicate racism and disparities, for sure. We've seen professional rappers, professional athletes who still suffer from driving while Black. We've seen those videos. So what we appreciate about Cardi B, and I want to shout her out because she's from the Bronx, I'm from the Bronx, we're from the exact same neighborhood, and using her platform when she could have been in the studio making another cut to make another million, using her platform and her voice to speak for someone who needs her is very appreciated. Via another person who's on the rise and is a talented and great artist with lots of followers, again, could have spent their time doing something else commercial. But she came to my office, we talked, and she had such a deep appreciation for the need to find equality for Lawrence Smith Fields, find justice for Lawrence Smith Fields, and I appreciate her. And without her voice and Cardi's voice, we would have probably millions of voices less speaking for us.
What do you feel are the underreported facts of this case, you know, throughout these past 2 months? What are some of the points that a lot of people aren't talking about and looking at?
You know, I think what's really underreported is this idea that, again, just to finish up this conversation about race, is that we're not playing the race card when we compare Lawrence Smith Fields to Gabby Petito. And I think that that's underreported. At one point, they talked about, I think Gwen Eiffel, I believe, from PBS, talked about what she called the missing white woman syndrome. So Gabby Petito's death brought that missing white woman syndrome back to the forefront. And when it comes to Lawrence Smith Fields, I've gotten like almost death threats. People are emailing saying, you know, I'm nothing but an N-word, and I'm playing the race card again, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, I don't play cards. I wasn't even a person who played cards in college. So I just call the facts as I see them. And if they're not going to look at the situation for what it is, then we have to make sure that they know that. And I think when you have these big media outlets who touch on this, and they even ask the question, you know, why were the police racially insensitive? And we answer, they make it seem, they leave it there. They should build on this idea that there's a disparity. And so I think that idea is underreported. It's not us playing the race card. It's a real problem that we have in this country. And if it wasn't for media, Lawrence Smith Field would be scraped up, taken out of the apartment, and we wouldn't even be talking about this. And it's happening way more than just with her. It's thousands of people like her. So that's underreported.
And the family didn't even find out about, you know, their daughter, you know, Lawrence Smith Fields, until a couple of days after, right? When they saw a note on the that was left by the landlord, right, at the apartment.
Correct. It wasn't even the decency of the police department to leave the note on the door to say, well, hey, call us. We tried to call you. We can't find you. There's a protocol that says that the family's next of kin should be notified within 24 hours in person. They didn't do that. They knew that this girl died. They knew that they removed that body from that place. Yet still, they didn't even try to call the family. And if you're not going to call the family, at least leave the note on the door. But the landlord had to have the decency to go down and say, if you're looking for Lauren, call this number. And so the landlord, Hector, did that. The family called Hector, and Hector gave the family the number to a Detective Cronin, who has since been put on administrative leave. But if it wasn't for Hector, the family would know nothing, and that's so unacceptable.
So, and then also just another detail saying, so the man that she went on a date with, he was the one that called the police and was like, hey, she's unresponsive, and we were on this date in the park. He was the one that called?
Yes, he was the one that called, and he, again, everyone who's innocent should be given that presumption. And as a defense attorney, I stand by that. But what I can tell you is this: all the experts are saying that you treat these scenes like a homicide and you dial it down. You don't treat it as nothing and dial it up. So this gentleman who reported her dead, they just took his word, and again, the now suspended or on leave officer just let it go. But what we do know is that he stated that she went into the bathroom shortly before midnight and she was sick. And then she came out and they continued to drink. Then she said that her brother came to the house and she went out to meet her brother. Then he said she came in and went back to the bathroom for 10 to 15 more minutes. And it wasn't his position to question that. What he's trying to create is a scenario that he's saying that she went out and maybe got some illicit drugs from her brother, went to the bathroom and started using them. But listen to the facts here. He said that before her brother even came, she came out the bathroom sick and she was throwing up, and she said, I apologize to him. Right. So if she went out to take some Christmas clothes to her brother because they went shopping that day, and she came back in, sickness doesn't just disappear. She could have went right back in because she still felt sick. Because again, after she first came out, they continued to drink. So for him to say that is self-serving. And the police department didn't collect the alcohol, didn't test the alcohol for fentanyl or antihistamines. They did nothing. And so now we're forced to do that. And that's a job that we've undertaken.
How was the brother felt about this? As you mentioned, kind of what the family in general is dealing with, but specifically the brother, to see her that night, to interact with her, according to the man that she went on the date with. How is he feeling about this entire situation?
Well, what he's been saying is that if he knew that was the last time he was going to see his sister, he would have spent a lot more time talking to her. But he said that she didn't look sick. She looked happy. She looked bubbly. They had been shopping all day. She brought out his clothes that was in her bag, and then he felt nothing about it, and he left. So to now find his sister, find out that his sister died that same day or early the next morning, he's full of remorse. He felt like he could have said goodbye, and he didn't. And those are the things that people grapple with in these scenarios. Never having closure because they couldn't say goodbye.
And the family, the entire family said she wasn't a drug abuser at all. She didn't, kind of use like prescription drugs, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. She had no history of using prescription drugs or any other kind of illicit drugs. She wasn't even a drinker. She could, they describe her as a light drinker. If she drank anything, she would just be bubbly and cheerful, but not throwing up and exhibiting the signs of distress as this gentleman stated she was. So that's a little bit odd to the family that all of a sudden she meets this guy and she's like so drunk that she's in a stupor. That's not her history. But what is correct, or something that we should focus on, is that all the experts are saying that nobody in their right mind will take a shot of fentanyl, a shot of hydroxychloroquine, or whatever that's probably Donald Trump's cure for COVID. But I forget exactly what it was. But
the bleach. It was the bleach. She's the Clorox, right?
Exactly. So she wouldn't. Nobody would take all those particular drugs at once. And so, but they're saying that someone would take those drugs if they were administered to them, because you would know. But you wouldn't take all those. That would be suicide. And then as experts are saying, you wouldn't take all those drugs and then wash it down with some alcohol. You definitely would have been trying to kill yourself at that point. So.
And the words that they used, right, was that he was a good guy. Like those were the words that I've seen float around. Like, police said that, they kind of took his word because he seemed like a good guy. What were his exact words, if you can recall?
Yeah, so Sergeant Cronin, the family called the number that Hector gave them. He said, "I'll be there in half an hour." 2 hours later, he's still not there, an hour and a half. And they call him back, like, "We're still waiting here. Our daughter is dead. Our sister is dead. She's not in the apartment. Something happened at this apartment. Get over here and help us out." He said, "Don't call me anymore. It was a good guy. He's the one who called 911, and you shouldn't be jumping to conclusions." And he hung up on them. And that's what you've been hearing.
And Cronin's one of the guys on administrative leave right now, correct?
Correct. He's on administrative leave.
Wow. Wow. So I guess just, how is it, kind of communicating with the family this entire time? You say that you're kind of, out of town yourself and busy yourself. So how has the communication been between you and the family on a day-to-day basis?
Well, what I would say to that point is that, some lawyers would just take these cases and focus on the legal side, et cetera. And that's our job. But I found myself in a space where I'm speaking to the mom almost every single day. I'm in the Caribbean today, and she texted me last night to bring her back some shells and some sand, just so she can have a bit of solace and kind of, just, reminisce about her daughter, because her daughter loved to travel, as you know. And so I said, no doubt, it doesn't cost me too much to go to the beach and grab something. But I'm always talking to her and to the brothers and just kind of giving them some assurance that aside from the legal side, they're humans and they need someone to give them comfort. They get comfort in the fact that we're advocating so hard. They get comfort in the fact that I have not slept an hour since this case started. The media interviews are you guys are something else. It's back to back to back to back to back. And so we must get her story out there. So I've been working with them on that and making sure that her story stays out there and making sure that we don't miss a beat. And so they appreciate that. The mayor just contacted me by text about 10 minutes ago, and he's announced that he's now instituting a victim advocate's office strictly to deal with next of kin type situations. And so he's still trying to do something to right this wrong. We have no choice but to file a lawsuit. So we've announced that we're filing a $30 million punitive wrongful death lawsuit, and we're hoping that the city would do the right thing. Because again, sometimes the only way to send a message to these municipalities is to let them pay. And we do think that punitive damages are appropriate in this case.
On a human side, just a couple of human questions. You mentioned it before, only 1 hour of sleep for you this entire time, like kind of a night. So how much sleep have you gotten? How much sleep has the family gotten through this entire process?
Well, the reality of this is that when you're doing these interviews, you're focusing on the things that went wrong in this investigation. You're focusing on asking the world to advocate for us. You're asking the world to help us get justice. However, when you say it's a wrap and you shut this interview down, then we have to look at Lauren's picture, which I have a huge poster board size picture in my office. I have to look and read these articles. I'm sure you'll send me a link to what you've done here. I've been reading these articles after I do them, these stories. And when you start to do that, all of what's really important starts to bubble to the top, which is that we lost a 23-year-old girl who, for all intents and purposes, was on a date. And everything that we know about this situation is that the things found in her body, such as antihistamines, are used to put people to sleep, make them drowsy, make them unfocused. Those are opportunities to exploit, rape, assault, etc. And we haven't even gotten the authorities to say whether they did a SART, which is a sexual assault rape test kit, to see if in fact there's any signs of vaginal tearing, to see if there's any signs of sexual assault. So from a human standpoint, when this interview locks down, then we start to feel the pain of how she might have went on a date with this guy. We're hearing stupid things about $40 for nails that this gentleman said that she asked him for. She didn't need nails to get done because she had her nails done. But even if you assume that that red herring was true and she asked for $40, so what? Does that mean that you can now put fentanyl and antihistamines in my drink and rape me, whatever? No. These are young kids, they learn as they go. So maybe that was a mistake that cost her life, but at least make us comfortable that we know that this gentleman is either responsible or not responsible. Either one is fine. No one's trying to defame this gentleman. We just want to know if he's responsible or not. And all the experts say, when you have the last person that was with a person who's dead, that person is a subject. I mean, a subject, a suspect, a person of interest. And Bridgeport to say, we're all set with him, he can go, that's unacceptable. And we can't sleep at night when we start to think about how we've been treated.
As a Black man working this case, how do you kind of teeter that line of professionalism and the human side, as you said, and still focus on collecting as many facts as possible to get justice for the family?
Well, you know, one of the associates in my office called me the other day and he said to me, "Are you okay?" That was the lead in question. I was like, "Why? Why do you ask that?" I thought, you know, what's wrong with me? And he says that, well, we're here checking the voicemails, and there's a lot of voicemails of people going, you know, "You nigger, I can't believe that, you know, you're doing this, etc. She was a drug user, leave it alone, etc." I know for a fact that if I was a white man, a white lawyer reporting the same thing, doing the same advocacy, and I raise the same race issues, then people applaud me. Maybe as a white person saying that, hey, we need justice, we need equality. They will say, wow, that's a white man who sees a clear vision of where we are. But as a Black lawyer, as you asked, I'm doing the same thing any other advocate would do, and yet still I'm being called a nigger and saying that I'm playing the race card, and I'm getting these calls on my voicemails saying, bad things, let's just say bad things. But I know now how Martin Luther King felt when J. Edgar Hoover and everyone else was calling him to call him everything under the sun, and call him an adulteress, calling him a communist, everything else. We don't change this history just because the years change. And I hearken back to what I said in the beginning. We're a new Black history, but if I'm getting called nigger because I'm advocating for a young Black woman who died, and Martin Luther King got called the same thing, then you know the painful history of this country has not changed.
Attorney Crosland, you've mentioned it all throughout the interview, but just to get it in one answer, what does the family want from Bridgeport? What does the family want from Connecticut? What does the family want from the police department here?
In a couple of words, we want justice for Lauren, and justice for Lauren is also justice for many, many other Black girls in this country who've gone missing and abused. And what justice for Lauren looks like is that we get an outside agency such as Department of Justice or someone else to come in and say, you guys didn't do this. It's going to be more difficult, but we've dedicated to this family, and bringing all the technology and bringing all the resources and everything to come to bear on this investigation. We're doing the best with our GoFundMe and our own team, but if you want justice, you tell us that you care. And the way you care is you bring in those robots and everything else that you have, that this government has, and you say, we're going to do what we should have done at the beginning. That's justice.
Attorney, how can people help? You mentioned a GoFundMe. Where can people help the family specifically, and yourself as well?
Correct. Well, with the GoFundMe, we had a goal of 50,000. I think we're maybe at 70, and now we just increased that to 100,000 today, simply because these officers are fired. The chief of police is resigning, I believe. We don't know who's going to replace these officers, and I got a call from new officers today. And so we're pleased that something's happening, but with a department that's in shambles, we know that we're going to have our own team continue to get more robust. We're going to have to hire a pathologist. We're going to have to hire a lot of different agencies to help us. So to help this family, we've moved the GoFundMe up to 100,000. Cardi B had 200,000 people who liked her views. If they just gave $1 a piece, that'd be $200,000. If they gave $5,000 a piece, that'd be $1 million that we'll collect. And we want all the money we can get to really hire a team, a CSI team, a forensic team. And we don't want money to be a bar, because we're going to find justice for Lauren. And so that's what I want the world to know, and that's how we want to be helped.
Attorney Crosland, in closing, is there anything else that you want to get out that you think is important information that you haven't mentioned already in this interview?
I would just say that if you look up the city of Bridgeport, you'll find their numbers online. And so I would like your listeners to be able to just go online to Bridgeport and call Mayor Ganem and call the police department and let them know that we're not going away. So if they get one phone call a day, this department will make sure they do the right thing. I've been getting hundreds of calls from people, white and Black, again, so let me end with that. I had a couple white families in California that called and said that their kid had overdosed on fentanyl. I have a white man from Boston that said that his daughter was a doctor, medical doctor practicing in Boston, went to school in Connecticut. I think she went to Yale, and she was found rolled up in a carpet in the closet, and they ruled it an overdose. And he said that he's old and he may die soon, and that he doesn't want to die without doing something for his daughter. And so again, he's a white man. He called me as a Black attorney to say, hey, I like what you're doing. I like the way you're using your voice, and can you help my daughter? So we have a Zoom call set up with him. So I just want to let you know that we are working hard, not just for Lauren, and Lauren's life stands for change and justice for everybody, white, Black, and everything in between. So your listeners can please call the city of Bridgeport on their numbers and say, hey, do more. If they just call #do more, then we'll stay on this and we'll get justice.
Attorney Crosland, we appreciate it so much. Rashad Milligan for Rolling Out News. You guys take care and have a great day.